Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar with me. I'm Kevin from SUHO. I have 6 years experience in the ESD field, so today I'd like to share some of my understandings on the ESD in the town planning stage, and I hope you guys enjoy this webinar. So today we're gonna start with navigating early stage planning to achieve the best ESD outcome. First of all, let's see what is SDAPP. So, sustainable design assessment in the planning process is a theme in Victoria where proposed developments are reviewed for sustainable design considerations. And it will be part of the application for a planning permit. So here we know any development, if you're gonna apply for a planning permit, you need to have the sustainable design assessment done. And it started in 2004 earlier as grassroots effort in few councils. Later, all these councils formed the KSB Council. Now we need to do some sustainable design for planning application, and what are the reports we need to do here? So there are 3 main types of reports. There are Sustainable Management Plan (SMP) and Sustainable Design Assessment (SDA) and ESD statement, which is only required in the city of Melbourne. The difference between the Sustainable Management Plan and the Sustainable Design Assessment is that SMP is usually used for large to medium scale developments like big office or hotels, whilst SDA is more suitable for small developments. So if you only have like 1 or 2 townhouse developments, you need to have SDA done for this. There are also other reports may be required in this planning stage. There are Waste Management Plan, Green Travel Plan, and Water Sensitive Urban Design plans. So a typical SDAPP process is looking like this. It's very complicated, and there may be like going back and forwards with councils, clients, designs, engineers. But there's key point to make all this complex process simple. That is, engage sustainable design early. So in terms of the sustainable design, there are 2 benchmark assessment tools. One is BESS, another one is Green Star. So they have very similar categories, and the way they're assessing are also similar, but they also have some difference here. So the advantage of BESS is BESS was proposed built to support SDAPP. So it's strongly aligned to council's policy objectives, and it's good to use for residential and mixed-use developments. It is more like a design guidance rather than like a rating tools. But it also has some drawbacks. One of the drawbacks is that it is tricky to use the BESS to assign non-residential buildings. For Green Star design and build adds to quality assurance when used as intended. It is designed for whole stages through design to operations, and it is most suitable for large developments like office and commercial shopping centers. The things for Green Star is nothing close to a design tool, it's more like a rating tool. And when it is used for SDAPP, it must demonstrate alignment with ESD objectives, which means there will be extra work involved here. So today we're gonna more focus on the best key categories. There are stormwater, IEQ, energy, and water. In today's webinar, we will only discuss stormwater and IEQ, and for next webinar, we will more focus on energy and water part. As we all know, all these 4 categories are compulsory in the BESS assessment, which means you need to comply with all these 4 to get past the BESS requirements. Okay, first let's start with stormwater. We have 3 questions here. So, what are Council's requirements and policy objectives here? And what are the common issues we may find in planning stage? And what we could do to achieve the best outcomes? As you can see on the right hand side, there's 2 images. One is Melbourne's post-development image and another one is pre-development image. As you can see, the storm treatment is very different. So first question, what are Council's requirements here? It aims to reduce the impact of stormwater runoff, also improve the water quality, and achieve best practice storm quality outcomes. It will incorporate with the use of water-sensitive urban design and also stormwater reuse. Please note here, some councils may have additional requirements for stormwater, like the design details, construction site management plan, or maintenance program. In the BESS, we need to achieve a storm score rating over 100% to get compliance with the requirements. And what are the common issues we may find at the planning stage? The first thing is there will be not enough permeable area included. As we all know, for developments, it's hard to balance the vegetated area and the building area or hard surface area. The second thing is there might be incorrect estimation of permeable areas, which I will come back to this in later with an example. The third one is location of rainwater tank unable to collect all roof catchment. For example, you may have a very big roof area while you only have rainwater tank located in one side of roof. In this case, it will be very hard to get the runoff of the roof from another side to go into this rainwater tank located on another side. The last thing is, sometimes we may have the rain garden not designed or located properly. So, tips to achieve good outcome. The first thing is increase the permeability when possible. So after that, the treatment will be very important. And the most important thing is maximize the roof catchment for rainwater harvesting. So if we can have as much as rainwater reused, then the design issues we're facing later will be minimized. And efficient use of stormwater treatment measures is important. So besides the rainwater tanks, the rain gardens or buffer strips, all these will make a lot contribution in terms of stormwater management. And we have 2 tools to assess the stormwater. One is storm, another is music. So storm is more like simple and easy to use software here. While music is more like appropriate for design more complex treatment, like treatment trains or large-scale development. We will have another webinar which will cover the use of music. So if you are interested, you can join us in a music webinar to have more information. Here we have some examples. As you can see, this is a big, large-scale stormwater management plan in Wuhan, in China. So it will have the filtering wetland to treat the stormwater, and there will be also treatment stations and the water circulation. As to latest news, all this development will be completed in next year. So let's wait and see how it will look like then. After we have looked at the large-scale development, this is a small-scale development. So as you can see, this is 6 townhouse in one lot. Sorry. So all the green highlight areas is vegetation areas. So here I will come back to the thing which I mentioned earlier, the estimation of permeable areas. Please note here, although the green highlight area is vegetation area, we still have like these red dot lines, which is the outline of a basement below. So here, for this project, the permeability is not all the vegetated area. So you can see here, the total gardening percentage is 48, while the permeable area is only 28.1. So here we must remember, although if they are vegetated area, if you have basement below, they will treat it as impervious areas here. Okay, let's come to the next key category of BESS, IEQ. Similar to stormwater, we have 3 questions here. What are council's requirements and policy objectives? And what is the key focus of IEQ? And what we could do to achieve best outcome? As for council's requirements and policy objectives, they consider the indoor environmental quality with fresh air intake, close ventilation, and natural daylight. Thermal comfort also plays a major role here, and the key point to IEQ is have a good passive design. Not like stormwater, in the IEQ in BESS, we need to achieve a score over 50%. So the key focus of the IEQ here is daylight. Presently, daylight is also the only IEQ focus in BESS for large commercial buildings. That's why we mentioned earlier, sometimes space may not be very suitable for large commercial buildings. Because also for residential buildings, we can also consider other aspects in IEQ, like external shading covers, double glazing, and ventilation. So now let's talk about daylight. We start with residential first. So in BESS IEQ assessment for daylight, for residential, there are 2 pathways. One is deemed to satisfy pathway, another one is modeling pathway. So in the deemed to satisfy pathway, there are 5 criteria. If you meet all these 5 criteria, then your development, your building will deem to have good performance in terms of the daylight. So they are to all the living area and bedroom area less than 8 meters deep, if facing south 5 meters. And do they have a floor to ceiling height of at least 2.7 meters? And does all the glazing has a VLT value at least 60%? And all the living areas should have an external facing window. The last but also most important thing is, these buildings need to comply with the requirements of building separation tables, which I will come back to it later. So, if you cannot meet one of the criteria here, it doesn't mean your building is not performing well. You can also do a detailed modeling to determine the performance of your building. So, here for residential, for living areas, the criteria is you need to achieve daylight factor more than 1% to 90% of the floor area. For bedrooms, it's less strict. So the daylight factor requirements is 0.5. So it's same for 90% of the floor area. So here is the building separation table I mentioned earlier. So as you can see here, the requirements for a building to its property boundary is different for living areas and bedroom areas. And the separation increases as the level increases. As you can see, if it's up to 4 stories for living area, you need to have 6 meters here. When it's 5 to 8 story, then you need to have 9 meters. And when it's above 9 stories, 12 meters are required. So let's see what's the situation here for non-residential pathways. So for commercial buildings, there's no DTS pathway, but the Green Star hand calculation method may be an option, depends on the factors. And for commercial buildings, points awarded when the daylight factor can demonstrate that 30% of the area achieve the requirements, and additional points are awarded when it's 60% or 90%. However, here, for large non-commercial projects, the only criteria available in REQ is daylight, which means we need to achieve the daylight criteria for over 60% in order to comply with the BESS requirements. And it is usually hard for some developments. So, what's the good point of doing a hand calculation? So using a hand calculation always means it's very quick and easy to conduct. And the most important thing is it's also recognized by the council. But it also has its disadvantages, like it will be low level of accuracy and it only accounts for side lighting, so not top lighting. So if you have a development with lots of skylights, unfortunately, skylights is not included in this hand calculation. And if you want to demonstrate the benefits of skylights, we need to do more detailed modeling. Of course, modeling will come with higher accuracy, but it will take more time and higher skill needed. So when we are in the early stage of the designs of a project, we highly recommend you to go with hand calculation first. It will give you an opinion of how your building performance and help us to identify weak points. Then we can do some things to improve the performance of that weak points. So here I want to show you guys an example of hand calculation. So for hand calculation, first we need to determine the depth of the zone of compliance. So it is the effective height times 2. As you can see in these two diagrams, the effective height of the compliance zone is not the total height of the window. It will be the height of window minus, starting from the 700 millimeters desktop or table levels. So here you can see on the diagram A, it is not the full height. This is the most important thing we should remember. And the width of compliance zones is width of glazing, and the total zone of compliance is the effective height times 2 and times the width. So this is one example of a typical office floor. And we can calculate the zone of compliance by using this method. And the result is presented like this. So all the green highlight areas is the compliance area. And you can see in this example, there's over 38.5% of the area is compliance with daylight, which means it's not performing very well. So we need to do something to improve the performance. Finally, what are the tips to achieve good outcome? The first thing is design to DDS or similar criteria. As I mentioned earlier, excuse me. As I mentioned earlier, if you design with all these DTS criteria, then your building will deem to have a good performance. And another thing is early daylight performance estimation. So if you can do it earlier, we can try to solve all these problems earlier, find all the areas which are not performing well, and consider daylight improvement measures like skylight, light coat, light finish, or shallow plans. Okay, there are also other BESS category which is not compulsory, but sometimes it might be easy for us to get points here, which could also improve the overall performance of our building. Management. So for management, what we could do to achieve best outcome. So first thing, early commitment to environmental targets is important. So before the start of a project, you need to know what's your target and what is your initiatives for ESD. Also, operation waste separation strategy is important here, and some things like regular tuning of building service and smart metering is also important. The last but also very important is preparation of a building user guide. So a building user guide is not very complicated. Sometimes it could be a simple guidelines of how your buildings cooperate with all the ESD initiatives. Like you have put the PV panels and how the use of PV panels here, and where is the location of rainwater tank, and the location of rain gardens, and what's the reuse rate of all rainwaters. So it can be simple and easy, which we can get like an easy point here. The other thing, transport. So for transport, the most important thing is location. But when you have decided your project is not something we can change, then we should do something to encourage the way of sustainable transport. So bicycle facility is important. So if you have bicycle facilities which is over 50% over the planning scheme, then you can get a point here. Also, the end of trip facilities will become with the bicycle facilities. The other stuff like electrical vehicle charging facilities and car share sim also plays a big role here. Waste. So for waste, the first thing is building reuse. So for some councils, it will ask you to have construction and demolition waste reuse by 70% by mass, and for some strict councils, it may be increased to 80%. And other important thing is convenience of recycling. So recycling facilities should be as conveniently located as least for general waste, and it will be more likely discussed in the waste management plan. Urban ecology. So for urban ecology, some tips here. The first is provide a communal space for people gathering for social exchanges. The other thing is provide vegetation areas and landscaping within and around the development. Green roof and facade also plays a major role here. Last thing, innovation. So for innovation, we have time points here, but it's more like if you have the ability to create them. So as we all know, innovation is something we do exceeding best practice standard, but sometimes it can also be cost effective. Like if you only just have like timetable for all the public transport around or some other things. So it will come with your ESD understanding and your typical project. So have a think about this and it will give you benefits. Okay, Thanks for joining me for this webinar. So if you have any questions, please just type in here, and you can also contact our number and our website, email above.